All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to our council meeting tonight. Thanks for being here with us. We appreciate the council being here. We'll excuse Councilman Baird. Hopefully he'll walk in shortly. But if not, we'll excuse him for tonight. To begin, we always start with our prayer and pledge of allegiance. We've asked Councilman Roosevelt to give us a word of prayer, and we'll ask Alan, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance? Okay.
Dear Heavenly Fathers, grateful to be gathered together as a city council and members of Roosevelt City and the Roosevelt City employees. We're grateful for this city we live in, for the freedoms we enjoy. We're grateful for the citizens of Roosevelt that give so much of their time and energy to the community. We're grateful for the state of Utah that we live in as well. We're grateful for those that serve us in the various capacities, especially those in the military, in the police, and emergency services, fire, etc. And we hope and pray that thou watch over and protect them and their families. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to serve on the council, and hope and pray that we can make decisions that will be in the best interest of the citizens of Roosevelt and help to move the community forward. We're grateful to thee and love thee, and we say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of our previous minutes, 10/15/24. Any amendments or corrections?
I did not see any, but I would like to compliment Sunshine on her efforts for keeping the minutes. I'm always impressed with her efforts and the detail she tries to put in those, but I would move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving to our next item, we have our public comment period. Anybody in the audience may take up to 3 minutes to address the council. Are there any here tonight that would like to take that opportunity?
That was, I just want to say that I'm not happy about the paint that's on the basketball. Is there anything that's going to be done with it?
I just noticed that it started pilling. Were you talking about the?
Correct.
Yeah.
I can give you an update on that. They're going to come and warranty it, but we thought it would probably be best to wait till spring. We'll not do it right now before winter.
Just as long as somebody's looking at it.
Yeah. We're on it. They've been contacted and agreed to come back out.
Yeah. Another question would be, I noticed some signs on one business that that stating that they're going to tow for public parking that's on the street there. Is that legal?
Now, are you talking like on Main Street?
Lagoon, I think it is.
Lagoon Street?
Correct. It's the public parking that's on the street, and they have signs there that says.
They don't own the property, so they don't have any right.
Is it a business?
Yes.
But I'll default to Grant.
But they do have some signs there, Grant, so you're aware of, like, limited parking, 2-hour parking or whatever that's been there for a very long time, or you know what I mean, between hours and stuff. And the signs say that.
These are new signs that
Oh,
are
new
posted
signs.
on the posts on the business.
The city controls everything on the street, so.
Yeah, we can go.
It's the Mexican restaurant that's on Lagoon there. I just noticed they posted 2 signs. Then the other thing is can you stop people from parking on the sidewalk? I walk my kids to and from school Mondays and Tuesdays from Meadowbrook to Centennial, and there are several cars always parked on that sidewalk.
That's a pet peeve of mine, by the way.
On which street?
Even just parking.
1080 is mainly the one.
We'll take a look at that too. Thanks, Matt. Anybody else? All right, seeing none. we'll move forward to, so we don't have any council appointments, committee appointments. We'll go right into UNOACs, and Leslie, we have several exhibits and right-of-ways and things like that that need to be addressed tonight. We have you going to present some things, and then we have another agenda item with Encore going to present some things, or did you know about that? Do we have Macy Robinson here tonight? Because we're going to try to combine those, and that's still something we want to try to do. Let's go ahead and combine those, but we'll let you go first because I think they are interrelated.
Yeah, they're probably working for me.
Yeah. So-
She's my daughter and I don't see her here, so.
But yeah, why don't you go ahead, Leslie, and whoever, Ryan, or you, Josh, you're presenting.
Grant's actually gonna do 9F.
Okay. So Grant will do 9F, we'll have you do 9A, we've got Exhibit A. Well, we've got several. So we've got the lay flat agreement, widening request, road widening request, the SUA, Roosevelt City SUA, PDF.
Surface use agreement.
Mhm. And then the 8.5 by 11 pipeline, Axie Energy to and Roosevelt City Corp. Road and Pipeline easement. So we have just quite a few. So why don't you come up, and then we'll start throwing these up here, and then you can explain what's happening.
Do I need to sign anything?
No, well, you do. Everybody needs to sign in who's attending, but you'll just state your name for the record and then who you're with.
My name is Leslie Pearson Rich. I'm here on behalf of UNOACs tonight. As JR stated, we have a few requests in to Roosevelt City. It looks like our first request, we have two pads that we use in access road and pipeline corridor through Roosevelt City currently. One is called our Duncan pad, one is our Mormon pad. We are requesting to lay a temporary lay flat water transfer line along our existing access road through Roosevelt City to our Warman pad for a freshwater pipeline. This temporary pipeline would be in place for approximately 2 months with fresh water just during our drilling and completion. Well, just completion, we're drilling right now. So from March to April of 2025 is our anticipated dates on that.
And this, if you don't know, this is, that's the sewer pond, the southern pond right there on the east side, and so.
Yeah, this property is owned by Roosevelt City over by the sewer lagoons, so. We've done some temporary right-of-way work on Roosevelt City lands before. Our request would be just the agreement we approved, just update that with legal descriptions and exhibits to reflect this new route. I believe Grant has reviewed our last agreement and we came up with some language, but we're happy to look at it and amend it however needed there.
Any questions on that area? And I think staff has looked at it and do you see any issues with it? Okay.
So our second request was the road widening. So same area, same road, but a different map, just to outline. There you go, thank you. So under our surface use agreement held with Roosevelt City, we kind of refer to it in the industry as like a blanket agreement of the lands that it covers. Again, this is our existing road that we use through Roosevelt City to access our Duncan pad. We're asking for the council to consider a road expansion of approximately 20 feet as we're making this corner and the trucks are having a hard time to make that corner and come up the hill. So we're asking for permission to survey with Outlaw Engineering a road expansion and payable under the terms of the current surface to use agreement that UNOACs is successor into with Crescent Point and Roosevelt City.
Can you zoom in on that so they can
On
see
this
that
area?
corner?
Yeah.
So just that area needs widened.
Yes.
Any questions? Oh, one quick question. as Leslie is saying that they already have a right of way, coming in that road, I know we were talking with XCL, and there's an agenda item for XCL and a pipeline. And the original thought was the pipeline was going to run along that road and in that right of way, and then south of that pivot. Did they communicate any of that with you? We're gonna talk about it a little later, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so Pax and I have been working closely on, because my next agenda item also works with XCL, now SM, but Pax, I'm not sure, you do have an existing line there, but I don't know that your agenda item tonight is this exact route, is it?
I don't think that will interfere with this at all.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we get to there, but there's a conflict with what the council proposed as far as where the line would go and where we saw the new proposal coming.
For the road expansion?
No, for the line you're talking about, so I was just curious.
I think there's probably two different lines tonight, right? That this line is your line that we're gonna talk about on agenda 3, and then you have an additional line.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here, because then we can piece all of this together.
I've
as we
been in
go.
Pax's office all afternoon bugging him, so he's probably ready to get rid of me.
Any questions on the road widening there? Makes sense, okay.
So, and then agenda 3 item this is where trying to get in the weeds of it all. The said pipeline that JR is mentioning right now is an existing pipeline right-of-way that Axia Energy acquired under an agreement, a road and pipeline easement with Roosevelt City. Our initial request for UNOWAX was to pretty much obtain our own right-of-way through here, and then working with Ryan and Josh, they asked if there was any way that we could work with XCL to help limit impact on Roosevelt City's properties. So we worked in collaboration with I don't know, Pax, is it XCL or SM?
It's still XCL till January.
Okay, so we've been working with XCL, and we are doing a partial agreement for them to partially assign some of their right-of-way to us, so that there's only one right-of-way, and we're both lying within the same right-of-way. With that, UNOWAC needs 30 feet of new right-of-way across Roosevelt City to tie in to the existing Axia pipeline. So the request would fall under that blanket agreement I previously mentioned for the road expansion. It covers those same lands that UNOWAC has a surface use agreement. And then we had Outlaw Engineering survey and official survey plot. I don't know if,
8.5 by 11 pipeline.
yep, that's it, yeah. So as you can see there, that's our existing Warman pad, and we'll be taking our pipeline across the Warman property and tying into the existing pipeline of XCL's. We'll be sharing gas pipeline, and then we'll be installing a buried water line within the existing XCL right-of-way. I think it's just under, let's see.
Is that, right, is that south, is that the same area we're talking, basically?
That is on the south side of, is that pivot 3?
Yeah,
Yeah, on top.
Yeah, it's up on top. I think that's pivot 3.
South side up on top,
okay.
That's 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Oh, 1 and 2, I'm getting all confused. Okay, thanks Kirby. Yeah, so their existing line runs on the south side of pivot 1
And that
and 2.
location is where you're actually drilling right now?
Yes, we have our rig on that Warman pad right now. We're drilling the 6 wells.
Yeah, I saw it up there the other day, and so I just wanted to make sure my bearings were straight.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any questions on that? Okay,
No.
continue.
That's all of my items. I only had 3. I know there was just a lot of attachments with it. A lot of the attachments were just referencing the XCL agreement where they have their existing right-of-way for the pipeline on the south side of pivot 1 and 2, along with our UNOWAC's current surface use agreement with Roosevelt City, and then just the exhibits. So 3 agenda items for me. Unless we want to go with
No.
9F, while I'm up here.
Well, you know what, we might as well. Let's, you know what, why we have this, so you don't have to, just in case you have some comments on 9F.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go with the council real quick. Do you have any questions on these? Does council have any questions for Leslie or staff on anything that she's mentioned so far? If not, can we get a motion on those items, and then we'll move to 9F?
Just a motion to approve the request.
Yeah, and
I'm happy to make the motion, I just want to make sure I do it correctly. Because it says you enter right-of-way request, do we just say we,
Request for the pipeline, request for the road
the-
widening,
the-
all in one.
so we have the lay flat PL agreement that would need to be approved, the surface use agreement that would need to be approved, and the road and pipeline easement. Those are the three that we're looking at, correct?
And I guess JR, real quickly, on the temporary pipeline, we're not planning that until March, so we're trying to just get ahead of it. We'd like to be able to just have it in front of council and approval, but not execute the agreement until March, because
That's
we only
okay.
run them as a temporary, okay?
Yeah, and as long as it doesn't change from
Yeah.
what the exhibit showed tonight, shouldn't need to
No,
come back.
yeah,
before
the
council.
exhibit wouldn't change, we're just trying to get ahead of the completion still.
Perfect, so it's those three,
so I would move we approve those three, the lay flat, the
Widening.
the widening, and then the pipeline and road, or pipeline,
and the surface use.
Surface.
Surface and,
yes,
surface use agreement.
surface use.
Roosevelt Road and Pipeline easement, actually Energy Road and Pipeline easement, and the lay flat P&L agreement. PL agreement.
That's what I would move.
Just gotta get our minutes right, is all.
We want to be transparent, but also cover you guys so you don't have to come back and.
Absolutely, thank you, we appreciate that.
We do have a second by Councilman Allen.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that's chunks taken care of. Let's go ahead and move to 9F, Grant, and then Leslie could be on standby just in
Yeah,
case there's any.
absolutely.
There were some agreements sent over that would, are to give access permission to conduct a survey. I don't usually see a lot of this type of agreement. Oftentimes it's handled less formally. XEL is a recent example where Scott just made a request that he be allowed to have people go on and do a survey. In reviewing the agreements, I have no problem with them. This is just a little bit more formal and would recommend that you approve.
And staff's in agreement,
Yeah, this is just, I mean, we talked about, this is just permission to go on and actually do a survey.
I would move we approve then, let's just move it along.
Okay, second. Motion is second by Councilman White. You know who the motion is by. Second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. That one's done. We'll go back to, we're gonna push the XCL up to, so that we'll go to you next, where we're talking about all these,
The XCL pipeline.
yeah, 9C.
What would you like pulled up first?
If you could pull up do you have the existing agreement that we signed back in, you might not have that up. Or you could just pull up that first plat there.
This one that I just
Yeah.
pulled up? Okay.
So my name is Paxton Marsh with XCL Resources. On October, I believe it was October, Roosevelt City, and I need to back up and say Scott Duncan apologized for not being here. I'm stepping in for him, so bear with me. But so Roosevelt City went ahead and approved an SWD called the Python SWD on the property. And after that was signed, Scott said that it was very important to him to make sure that we get the pipeline route and the road access all agreed upon before we record. So what we've done in the last 4 months is we met with Roosevelt City several times in the field to look at this route, to bring our pipeline to the actual SWD location. And we, it changed several times. I think Curry was out there with us, some of the other folks from Roosevelt City, but we finally got a route that worked for everybody. The actual footage is approximately 7,116 feet. And in the agreement, it's $8 a foot, so this will be a payment for $56,928 to Roosevelt City.
Scott said somebody was texting him before the council meeting with some questions. He wanted me to make sure that I tell you guys that the pipeline is rated for up to 2,250 pounds. Also, that the pipeline will be buried at 4.5 to 5 feet deep.
Do you know what the normal operating pressure will be on that line?
Around 1,500 is what he said. Yeah, 1,400 to 1,500. So this is the first plat that depicts where we'll come off our existing pad where we currently have an SWD on the Duncan property. And we will actually bore underneath Roosevelt City here because of the drainage. And we won't, so that there'll be no surface disturbance through this tract. It will be a bore underneath the ground. If you can click to the next tract here. Not that one.
Okay, let's just go up here.
Let's just start with the first one.
This Ballard Water Improvement District.
Yeah. Okay, not that one.
Yeah, that's coming across, just the main road basically.
Yeah.
I think that's the one we just looked at. Is it this?
So that's the main route, and that's the one that we met with Roosevelt City quite a few times in the field to get to our SWD. And this is the 7,116 feet.
So this is the one that was in question, and this is why, Leslie, I was asking you, because I knew when Scott came originally, we had talked about a couple of different routes to get to that SWD. And we had mentioned to him that the reason for the SWD being placed behind those, or on the east side of those pivots, was because we have gun range going in.
Yes, sir. So originally when we met you guys out there, we were proposing the SWD further north. And because of the plans for the gun range, we've shifted to get behind the pivots off the hill.
Exactly.
And then the pipeline route originally,
Followed the road.
it followed the road all the way around. And then it actually came up right through the middle of a pivot. And when we were out there, I think with your planner, city planner, he said, why can't we just go right through the two pivots instead of through them?
And I'll just show you what I remember, and I think what we have, at least on our records that the council already approved, is that this pipeline was gonna follow this road down to the south, which would intersect and connect with where you're working, your easements on the south side where you're actually drilling. Come around
And
this
then come
backside
around,
and come over. The reason for that is just to make sure, we like to have our easements and our utilities in the roadways because we know that those are always going to be. But one of the big problems that we noticed, and I noticed, I'll stick my neck out there, is right in this area right here.
Yeah.
Is where our cowboy action range is going to be built. And so it goes almost right through the center of where we already have and I'll show you an image of it here. But unless you have that image.
Oh, yeah, that one.
So that is the cowboy action shooting range that we've already planned for that area. And so that timeline that you're proposing, instead of following this road down along the backside here, would come right about through this area,
Okay.
which is going to impact that.
Would you prefer us sticking with the original route, or could you live with this coming on north of this and then to pick up our new route?
Or would it be an option to stay on the road until you get south of the Kelly Action Shooting Range and then jog over?
Yeah, what if you came this direction?
Yes, I think that would definitely be something
And
we
come
could do.
through.
Yeah.
Because I think,
Oh, we weren't aware of this, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
this came up, and that we didn't record anything, because we can adjust this, not a problem.
yeah.
We don't want our.
Well, and the council ultimately has to approve any changes,
Yeah.
but yeah, this was just caught as we were going through.
Okay,
I think, you might want to go back out and just look and see what that looks like.
okay.
I think, me personally, I would be okay, but I just want to make sure that we don't have any conflicts. If you build through here, then we've gotta have extra provisions in an easement that says if you ever have to tear that up and
Right.
repair a line.
No, it's
Then
better to
you're-
shift now. I agree.
Yeah. So, I don't know how staff feels, but about just hanging sticking to the road, or if there's an option to go south of where that will be. It won't really change much on this actual pipeline. Or this, it's not gonna change much of your footage.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to go around, you're gonna add another
Not a big deal.
2,000 feet.
Could we get a copy of that shooting range? Is that something you could share with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we're, okay. And then if we can work something out, so I don't know that the council would be ready to approve anything quite yet.
Okay, that's okay. I have some other things to discuss that I would like to talk to you about.
So we can just kind of put a hold on this one, but let's go ahead and to the next.
Okay, so a lot of you heard that XCL is entered into a purchase sale agreement. They've actually closed that, and we're now operating under a TSA, which is a transition service agreement, until the end of the year. So SM Energy out of Denver, Colorado bought XCL. So the actual survey plats that we ordered are in SM's name, and if we're gonna re-execute the document, because we didn't record the original, we wanna just go ahead and put everything in SM's name, because they'll be the one drilling the well.
Okay.
And then we can also, before we do anything, Scott and I can get with you guys, and we'll get out in the field and try to change that route to make sure we avoid this.
Yeah, and we can get, Jones and the Mill has helped us with that, and they have ideas of where that would be staked out, I'm sure, so they can work with you when you go out there and stake that area and make sure that they show the footprint of where that's going to go, and then you can see where the line spot can go and make sure it still makes sense for you.
And so the consensus is to go south of the Kawashi Range.
Personally, that's what I would like to see. What do you think? Is there anything else in that area that's gonna impact?
No, because of the depth and stuff, you'll be underneath what is there, yeah.
Okay.
I think you'll be fine.
I think long-term is the best route to
Yeah.
go, just to stay away from
Yeah,
the shooting range.
and then we can have our fun and you guys can have your fun. So,
Very good.
great. Anything else?
So I brought some plats, but before I hand all these out, I'm just gonna go ahead and redo these, and we'll hand them out or get them to you before I actually do it.
Awesome, that sounds great.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate, by the way, what XCL and Scott and you all have done for us in that area, and things we're greatly appreciative
Yeah.
for all that. So we definitely want to work with you, but we do want to make sure that, you know, we have some things planned for that area. We want to make
You
sure.
guys have been a great partner for us as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's jump back. Now we're gonna stop jumping around. We'll go back to 9B. Drew, your favorite title?
Least favorite love.
It's the holidays. It's getting close anyway.
Well, this is definitely a present, so. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to go through the last title of our chapters here, of our titles for Roosevelt City. I'll segue into Mike's presentation on a wrap-up of their work and our titles today. Going over Title 17, just wanted to highlight a few of the major additions that we added to Title 12. And if you have any questions, just stop me. I'll kind of go through these. We got Title 17. So the first one, as we have added is some penalties that we didn't have in before for land use. .01.090. And this basically gives our law enforcement some teeth to issue a Class C misdemeanor if it gets to that point after the notice of violation letters. Just gives us a little bit more leverage where we didn't have that before.
Didn't want a Class B, huh?
They went with the Class C, so, yeah. And that can be changed as well. Moving down to 04.230, IADUs and DADUs. These are not acronyms for a missile. These are actually internal dwelling units and accessory dwelling units. The state has mandated that we have to allow the internal dwelling units a percentage of our zones.
to comply with that. We did add the,
That's like a room above a garage type thing.
yeah,
And
yes. Mhm.
yeah.
And they did spell out a lot of what we can and can't allow in that. The door cannot be in the front, it has to be accessed from the side or the back. So we basically just rolled in what the state has set up for.
Mandated, just say it, just.
There you go. I'm trying to be polite.
Trying
Yeah.
to tell us how to run our cities.
Oh, 4-230. So any questions on either of those? It does address parking as well. It pretty well mandates what we can and can't do with those. This would be for let's see, 6,000 square foot minimum. So on our I-80Us, that would be a 6,000 square foot lot or larger, which covers pretty much all of our zones. The ADUs, we put in there 10,000 square feet or larger, so our R110 and larger on the accessory dwelling units. So
One question, and I don't know if it's addressed, Mike, you might know as well, but we have had interest in the past with tiny homes, and we don't really have an ordinance.
It's
that
in
goes
here.
out. Did we get to that? Okay.
Just now.
There's an overlay.
we saved the best for last.
Okay, I figured it was in there, I just,
So, any questions on the I-80Us or the ADUs? They're pretty mandated, I guess, as far as the state goes.
Since we're we're probably not near, I did R1703050. It was another word salad, Mike, and it's probably because I'm not very bright. So it's 350. I think, I'm trying to remember part B, number 3. So if you look at B, it says, in determining whether or not enforcement of zoning ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship under this section, the appeal authority may not find an unreasonable hardship if the alleged hardship is 1, is located, 2, comes from circumstances peculiar, and 3, in determining whether or not the enforcement zone ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship, the appeal authority may not find an unreasonable hardship. If the hardship is I just felt like, I don't know, maybe it's fine. Again, I'm not legalese, this is grants, but it just felt like when I read that, it didn't, especially because you had the one part above and it felt like you're almost repeating it, so.
it's hard to quantify.
Anyway, I was confused, and if I'm confused, it doesn't mean anything other than there may be other people that may be confused as well.
Not enough numbers in there.
That's right, there's not enough numbers in there other than,
Spell it out with.
anyway, do you see what I'm saying on
I
that?
totally get it on that one.
I didn't, that was the only one I found that I had one other later that I just
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily word salad, but I thought Kamala Harris had written it. Oh, I should say that.
Hey,
Good to know.
I've heard some of those speeches and I'm telling you, blown away.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. That was that part. Go ahead and do your next part.
Okay, moving on to short-term rentals, 17.04.240. So we have added in a short-term rental clause in here. There's a lot in this one. A business license would be required. It would have to be a conditional use permit as well. And we took a formula that has been, the RCC recommended this, it's been somewhat normal across the state as far as how many residents you have in your community versus how many short-term rentals we would allow. So the equation for us would be a 14 for our population, and that can change, but we thought that would be a good starting point. There is separation from how many you can have within 1,000 foot unless they are owner occupied. There's a provision if you live there, then you will have a variance on that. So we thought this would be a good starting point to test the waters on short-term rentals. Only allowed in our commercial and our PO&R districts at this time. Okay,
Have you looked to see how many short-term rentals there are already?
in Roosevelt City. The state code
You're
right
talking
now.
Airbnbs, right?
Like,
Yeah.
like if I'm looking at an Airbnb, have you looked to see how
I have
many there
not.
are?
In fact, there are some laws that don't allow us to do that as far as enforcement goes.
So
I'm
we
just wondering
can't-
if 14 is a little shy of what we might need. Like, I'm just thinking,
Especially with no hotels.
no hotels, no RV parks, no place for anyone to stay. I kind of think we let the market drive that a little bit. Like, if we don't have hotels in town, we don't have, I don't know, I think 14 is kind of limiting.
So, and this is and I agree, I think we need to, you, as council, need to decide what that number is. The purpose of this in A, I'll just read this to you. The purpose of this section is to regulate short-term rentals within the city to ensure compatibility within residential neighborhoods and to ensure short-term rentals won't unreasonably reduce housing opportunities within the city. So with that in mind,
You're kind of limiting already if you're limiting the zones.
sure, exactly, yeah.
So maybe that's our limitation.
And I think that's a good way to look at that.
Yeah, a number's hard. How do you
Yeah.
enforce a number?
Yeah, I'm with,
If you oversaturate the market, then they're not gonna be successful and they're not gonna be able to stay in business. So I think the market will kind of drive what's possible there.
We did implement in C there, the method behind this, 2 short-term rentals per 1,000 of the city's total population. So we could take that out, or go whatever direction you'd like.
I think you take it out, also I agree with Councilwoman Goodrich, but I think the market would drive that, and the enforcement is my biggest concern though, is how would you enforce that? I mean,
It will be tough, we do have the business license required and
Yeah, but-
conditional use, but people, and we are limited, we can't jump on every.
CC&Rs would limit that as well.
Yeah,
You know, restrictive covenants and things like that, so.
like I mentioned on the enforcement of this, the state, it's funny, Grant might have a little more information on this, but we can't jump on the VRBOs or the Airbnb websites as code enforcement and go off of that. We have to have different methods to enforce that by state statute, so.
And if that's the case, then how do you really actually
Neighbors can
enforce it?
It is basically neighbors complaining, is what they tried to limit it to.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll make that correction. And if you're good with the rest of that section, we'll,
So tell me about the part where it says, the 1,000.
That's what he was, the C.
yeah, they're taking that out now.
That part will be all out,
we'll
okay,
strike that.
all right.
What about is that so 1 per 1,000 feet?
Yeah, so they did limit that as far as the square footage in between units, unless you own or occupy, then that would have some
Basically every
variances
fifth of a mile.
to break it up a little bit.
And that's the state saying that?
No,
Or
that's,
us saying
that's, this is the recommendation that RCC has compiled for us based on other.
Planning commission.
But I'm wondering though, like in a commercial or multi-use, like your office, yeah. I don't know, I mean, if it's zoned for that, people that are going to invest in a home that are aware of that are gonna, that is going, again, it goes back to market, because that's going to affect the price one way or the other of somebody wanting to buy, and even steer somebody from buying in that area, whether they, I don't know, I think by the zoning, you've already taken care of that for the most part.
I think so too.
Because in a commercial zone, I don't care if there's 10 in a row, sure, who cares?
Again, it's still enforcement, you get out a measuring tape and make sure it's 1,000, you know what I'm saying, and,
But you have office space and things like that mixed with residential and POR anyway.
right.
And then a commercial is zoned commercial, so, I mean, that's where you have your hotels and such anyway. And so I just don't see, like Main Street, for example, we have some residences on Main Street that is zoned commercial. Like, I don't know and there's not a lot of neighbors around there on Main Street, right? So I don't know who's gonna complain if there's a different vehicle parking from that house every day. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the zoning, if we're limited to those zones, I think that takes care of it. We can pull out the 1,000.
I think a lot of these recommendations and things come from places like Moab or something where neighbors are really getting overburdened with other
Yeah,
too
you're
much
right.
parties and stuff. We're a little different than that. We don't want that to happen, but we are a little different than that.
The reason this is being forced at us, in my opinion, and this, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to on the record anyway, is because you have different areas out on the Wasatch Front. They're very highly populated. There's not a lot of space to grow or do a lot of these things, and so it's mandated. And some of those are upper echelon areas that are being forced to adhere to these types of provisions, where otherwise they wouldn't normally adopt those types of things in their cities. And so I can see where they would want a lot more restrictions in those types of settings than we have.
I agree. I don't think we need the restrictions there, so I think you strike D.
I would say, let's leave it to the zones and leave it as open as possible where there's not a real way to enforce it until we do have problems. And then we can identify what problems we're actually having and address them appropriately versus throwing a.
Great. Okay, we can do that.
So striking C and D, is that kind of where we landed?
Okay, we made that note.
I like that, get rid of policy.
And then if we have a problem, then we can address it.
Right, exactly. But I still like getting rid of policy.
And we did take care of the parking as well, in that section. So, okay, that takes care of that section, short-term rentals. Dot 15.050, residential RM 13 and 18. We did implement, and Grant has helped us with a draft to allow animals in the RM 13 and 18 as the same acceptable provisions of the R16 if they have a 6,000 square foot lot and only one dwelling per lot based on a conditional use permit. So if they don't meet the conditions or if we have problems, we can go back on that conditional.
With that, just going back to the previous discussion about ADUs and those kind of things, would that disqualify them if they had an accessory dwelling unit?
In the RM 13 and 18. Which those are exempt regardless because, well, depending on the square footage, the R16 6,000 square foot would be the minimum for the. Sorry, Sunshine, it was 17.15.050. It's a table.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
I had a comment on this section and as I looked through this, and if you scroll up just a little bit, Sunshine, go up just a little bit right there. On B and C, it does define the PC, X, CC, PC, etc. But then you'll scroll down and you'll go through chart and chart and chart, and you have to go back and find that if you don't remember or you don't know. So a recommendation would be to have maybe at the bottom of the table legend, because like I didn't catch it the first time, and I'm going through, what is this CCC or CZA? And I know there had to be a legend, but I could not find it initially, and then finally as I got scrolling around and looking, I found it. And so to me, I think
At maybe the top of each chart.
or something, just some sort of legend, just it could be in smaller print, but closer to each table so that you know what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
And the other question I had, I know that you have the overlay coming up eventually, the tiny home and the airport overlay that were added, but none of those are in these charts. And my question was, do we need them in these charts for anything?
No, the tiny overlay will be totally separate.
Okay.
It'll be based on.
That's what I thought. I just was checking that. I didn't think so because I know those were specific to certain things, and like I said, it wasn't clear until I did some searching and then found, okay, X stands for, prohibited, and C is
They'll
conditional.
have the definitions and the use before the actual.
Well, they had it in the one paragraph there, and then you don't see it for a while, and then you see it again in another one, but it's just, it's like you could scroll through 20 pages and not find it.
Literally.
And be frustrated as a person that was trying to find out what our code is.
We can have have them add at the top of each page a legend.
I just think that would be helpful just to make it a little clearer,
Definitely.
so.
Okay, we'll make that note. Okay. Any questions on the animal overlay for the RM 13 and 18?
I think it's a good compromise. I know it's been discussed quite a bit.
You feel good about it as well? I think the draft that came up with planning and zoning felt good with it, so.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Now on to the airport overlay, 17.25. Now I need to, this came up, the county, we've been mandated by the state once again to come up with an airport overlay district for anybody who has an airport within their jurisdiction. We've already had ours in place, Duchesne County did not. So rather than Duchesne coming up with their own, I met with them at a commission meeting. They did have their own, the commissioners felt like they need to work with Roosevelt City to adopt what we have in place. So it gave us an opportunity to reach out to our FAA engineer, Kimberly, with JUB, and to add some things that she felt like we needed in this overlay ordinance. So what we've added came from the direction of Kimberly and our FAA engineers at JUB. A couple of clarifications on this draft. There was
Our airport board.
yeah. There was a few things that came up in between the time that we approved this in planning and zoning last week and now, basically just grammar clarifications. There was one definition that was added as far as, let me give you that. It's 25.080 airport safety compatible zones. Zone 1, it gave a little bit more description as far as what uses and activities are on an airport, where before it just said approved uses and activities, now it reads directly associated with the airport. So it gave just a little bit more clarification, so other than that, this is the recommendation from our airport engineers. And it will be adopted hopefully with the county as well. They have a meeting next Monday. If you guys give us a soft approval on this, we won't bring this to you for final resolution adoption until the 3rd with the corrections that you've made and a public hearing to wrap it all up. But with the information that we have here, I believe that'll give the county enough to move forward with their approval process as well.
And just so that the council's aware, we did have the airport board involved with this. Kimberly explained everything. We talked to, various pilots and people that are around the airport and understand some of those things, and they were comfortable and felt good about what's discussed and what's agreed on. So I think we've covered our bases really well on this.
Okay.
Just for the minutes, can you tell me the animal overlay, where that's not in the code?
Yes. It is 17.15.050.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, best for last, tiny home overlay.
Yay.
Yay.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
So, Vernal City adopted a similar version to this, minus a few clarifications that we added. So we've extracted this out of Vernal City
Where's the tiny home one?
recently, 17.26, the very last one. So this would allow tiny homes in Roosevelt City, based upon case by case. It's an overlay, it's basically an overlay. So this would have to come through planning and zoning and the city council body. And it does give some provisions as far as how many you can have, the lot size, the building footprint, and so on and so forth.
Would it kind of act like a HOA?
No, not an HOA. It could potentially house more than one unit on a lot. So it would be an owner could have up to 4 units on a lot, depending on if the square footage is adequate.
Okay.
So not necessarily an
So the
HOA.
owner would just pay the property taxes on the
Yes,
lot
correct.
and maybe rent out they wouldn't be able to sell the tiny homes.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
They would have, if they have more than one per lot. And that was one of the clarifications that
The
we
lot
made.
can't be split.
Yeah, Vernal's had that to where it didn't clarify that it could not be split or could be split. We made sure we put on there owner of record must, because you can't
And
really
then
split
how do
off.
the utilities work for that?
It would all be in the one owner's name as far as the utilities.
So one of the questions that I had as tiny homes became a topic of discussion a couple of years ago is I look at tiny homes similar to the way I look at trailer parks. And I felt like this was an opportunity for us as Roosevelt City as well to maybe zone areas where you could have a tiny home park, but have not an HOA, but more of a some restrictive covenants or something like that of how that had to look and be maintained. And also adopt that to our trailer parks and they could be grandfathered in for a certain amount of time, but then I think our trailer parks need to look at the way they're, I don't know, addressing, landscaping and lawns and things like that, where we can kind of lift both, have this option, tiny home option, treat it similarly as a trailer park, then kind of categorize those as the same and make sure that those requirements are similar as far as, landscaping and lawns and maintaining a certain curb appeal, because they tend to be neglected, I guess would be a good way to put it. So I'm just wondering, and maybe that's not something we work in now, but maybe we structure it to where we leave it to a point where we can come back on Title 17 and readdress that in the near future.
It does have, we do have in here landscaping for the overlay zone. It is required to have landscaping. It does cover, and they are.
It said too, right? Did I read that before they could occupy it, they had to have landscape?
But one thing I do want to bring up to you, we actually do have that as far as a bond will be held. I don't know if I like the way, and Grant, you might need to weigh on this one, in landscaping. See, sunshine, it's right before 26.0.
And I'm thinking even ongoing maintenance, like making sure that, if landscaping is in, I've seen where some of those areas, they'll have a yard and 5 years later it's dead.
Could put a little more teeth in this.
Yeah, and then I think we carry that over to our trailer parks and really try to lift those up to a certain level of expectation. And not extreme, but just reasonable.
Yeah, you lost all of
Yeah, it just
26.
like glitched out on me and now I'm not sure where I am. Tell me again,
Keep
17,
going
25.
now.
26.
Drew, one thing I noticed when our 1726 tiny home starts, the header still says airport overlay. So we need to update that. To
Yeah,
say-
we can do that. Okay, I'll read this to you since we can't
Okay.
get that pulled up. Basically, under that landscaping, it does say and this is talking about the bond to be held. It says, undertake the necessary landscaping improvements directly utilizing the forfeited bond amount to cover the cost of such landscaping, or, number 2, it states, and this is the one I don't know if we want to have, allocate the 4-foot bond amount towards other city improvement projects as deemed appropriate by city council or as designated authority. So basically it's stating we can take that bond, don't have to do the landscaping improvements, we can use it for other
Yeah, I don't like that idea because those areas tend to be more neglected parts of the city. And so we just want to have a few things in place so that people are required. I mean, I lived in the trailer park when I was first married, and I planted a lawn and everything else, and it's not that hard, but I think that should be a requirement. Maybe it's not a lawn because you're trying to conserve water, but just a certain level of.
Doesn't have to be large, just a little bit of some kind of landscaping to get a little feel.
Right.
So if we strike 2, there, she's got it pulled up on the screen there.
And like I said, I think this is probably a good start, but I think it's just something I would like to work on, maybe with you and Grant, and even some of the council that are interested, and just try to develop that a little better, because I would like to see some of those other areas while we're doing this, meet the same standards and.
So maybe hold off on putting the tiny home in right now. Do we need to have it in for the state code or?
No, we don't have to have an infostate code. We have had quite a bit of interest over the past.
Yeah, there's some interest there, so I think we have something in there, and if we have to where they have to put landscaping in, I think that's good for a start, but then I think we add to that at some point and say, you have to maintain, the landscaping and certain things to a certain level. I go down to St. George and some other places where they have trailer parks, and you can't really tell the difference between where the trailer park ends and a nice subdivision begins.
We have that honestly in homes in town too, not just trailer parks where lawns have been neglected and gone and just
Yeah.
on Highway 40 between L and Big O.
Yeah.
It's a sad stretch, so
Right.
we could enforce a little bit more all along there, put a little more teeth in that too, so,
It's a good start.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, should we strike 2 on that?
I have some concerns with 2 as well, but I can do some research if you want to keep it, but I have some concerns.
I didn't think there was a legal way to take a bond that was out, that was,
That's what I'm worried about.
Wouldn't the
Also,
bond be to put their yard in if they don't?
And that's what, one basically, if we scroll back up to 1, that is what that would cover right there.
And I don't know that 2 is not possible, but I would want to look and make sure that it is.
What?
I
The
just
whole
say
intent
instead
is
of
to
the
make sure
bond
the
is
landscape-
just have them have the yard in for occupancy.
well, and this is if they fork it on their bond, and that gives us the money to go in and actually develop it, or we can take the money and use it somewhere else. The whole intent is to improve the area to make it look nice so
Yeah, well, I would.
legally, if we can or can't, I just think it's a terrible idea.
I agree.
We can strike that one.
In what situation would that bond be forfeited? And for,
If they started development and then got so far in, maybe met bankruptcy or something like that, couldn't finish the development, but they already bonded with the city, we could take that money and go and
so if
finish.
they don't forfeit the bond, what happens to that money? Is it returned or?
Yeah, it's returned because they developed the property.
My thought was if they did everything they were supposed to and you had a block of money that didn't go somewhere, then, maybe the reason for that number 2 is so that you could use the money for something. But if they're gonna get it back, they follow, then you don't have to hold on to that money forever.
It's almost like if they bond to do roads or sidewalks, and then they default in the middle of the construction, then we bond to where we can go fix that. And this is saying, well, we don't wanna finish the road and sidewalk, we're gonna spend that money on something else, it's just not a good practice.
Perfect, we'll take that one out. And just note as well, this will have to have public hearing as well for the 300 surrounding feet of any lot. Will it be considered?
Like for the overlay, each time you do it in an overlay, you'll have to have a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that pretty well wraps up all the big changes. Mike, if you want to take us home on this whole project, unless there's any other questions for me.
Thanks, Drew.
Good work, thank you.
Well, thanks, yeah, Mike Hanson, Borough Community Consultants, been working on this, I think I was still a fetus when I started. Just one thing, just for the record, you have got to thank your planning commissioners and Drew and such. These guys have done the legwork on this. This is a lot. In fact, I was scrolling through that document, and I thought your computer was funny because it kept scrolling the pages.
283.
Yeah, and it's probably still counting. I actually just out of curiosity went through and I was like, I wonder if there's a page where we didn't make an edit. There were 2. One was blank, so still counted it. Yeah, your planning commission, your folks have done a ton of work on this, and it is imperfect. It will always be imperfect, and I liked what you said. A couple of points I'd like to just remind you about, though. Your final deliverable from us will be digitized, and so things like the table, where you'll be able to see what you can freeze the header and just have it scroll, because that paper version right now, I was looking at it, it's 12-something pages long. Yeah, of course you're gonna forget what the heck does this mean. So we're gonna be doing that. You can, again, change it over time. The other point, though, we'd like to make, Earlier this year, you kind of did a soft approval on the subdivision title. The state does require that to be done before the end of the calendar year, and it is intricately tied to this title. So hoping you really like this one and it can move forward in December, so that we don't get in trouble. And
I think we're far enough along with approving. If we need to make any corrections, we can
Right.
address those.
in January or after the session, you will.
Yeah, probably we should wait till after the session.
Yeah, give it just 2 months and then you'll know what you need to do.
Yeah, our way, they'll revoke everything that's been mandated.
So, just the last thing, I like some of those comments about the word cell. You're gonna find that in 200 and something pages. It might have actually, that looked like a state definition, but who am I to judge? In your motion, I would recommend that you let staff do some plain language revisions that aren't, policy changes. It's just make it English. But there's also just unbelievable amount of cross references and numbering that will inevitably have to change as we get digitized and finalized in the systems. Anyway, I can answer any of the easy questions, any hard questions, Ruth, right there.
Do we need a motion just to go to public hearing next month, or?
Yeah, we'll need a motion to hold a public hearing for this Title 17.
Okay, so I just moved. Oh,
So what we'll do for next meeting, hopefully, is take all of the titles and bunch them in for a resolution approval by the 3rd of December, I believe, with a public hearing.
okay, so all of them?
All of them. We've already brought all of them.
Right, well, I know we brought all of them, okay.
So
I thought we approved some of it,
we have, but without the resolution
Or ordinance.
or the ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah, you can approve
okay.
the revisions, but they
so I would change my motion to go to do all of them next month on the 3rd and have a public hearing.
Okay.
And I'm sure Sunshine will clean that up to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
I'll second it. Second by Councilman White, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
That packet's gonna be awesome, by the way.
Well, thank you, it's a long time coming, but we really appreciate the work.
Hey, thanks for all your work.
From everyone.
And I was excited scrolling through that, Mike, that there was actually things deleted or.
Yes.
That's always a positive, because that'll help
I think you're,
shrink some of those pages a little bit, even though we added stuff at the end.
not break the internet, yep, that's a good call.
We jumped around enough, we're almost finished, believe it or not. We just got a couple other items, we'll go to 9D, terms of the mill general service agreement. And then, Josh will have you stay up there for 9B as well. So we'll have you tackle both of those. Mr. 8.
So 9D, Jones and DeMille General Service Agreement. So this is our general service agreement with Jones and DeMille Engineering. Excuse me. What they've recommended we do is extend for another 2 years. They give us a discounted rate with an estimated fee of $75,000. After speaking with Grant and staff, we're actually recommending that we approve this as presented with the exception of changing it to a 1-year agreement. As we work on different things with our engineering services. Jones and DeMille is not here tonight, so this would have to go back to them as well for approval as well. But that is our staff recommendation. We have been working well with Jones and DeMille. Kirby's been working with them to get a list of all the grants that each of our engineering firms have done with us and the money that they have brought in. Wonderful services, we have no concerns with it, we would just recommend that this be changed to a 1-year agreement. Then we can renew it each year with City Council.
Okay, I'll move that we do that. I've not had any problems with Jones and Mill that I know of, so they've been a good partner. But if they approve the 1 year, then I would move we go forward with contingent on their approval.
Okay, motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Goodrich, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. And Grant Charles, you're up on this one with Josh Fay. Charlie, both are on there, so-
Grant drafted the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a copy of it,
I
Sunshine?
think so, I'm just getting there, the information up through.
I love the way you do that, by the way.
Yeah.
The hyperlinks, that is awesome.
That's the software, not me.
Well, I know, but you have to.
Still have
You
to
still
do
have to
it.
put it together.
Very handy.
So this started off as just a template for the innovation hub that is here right next door, it's the annex.
Sure. If I can just mention one thing, so as you know, we have our new innovation hub, we have the grand opening. The purpose is we want to transition everybody over there. The innovation hub, how we presented to the community was this is a temporary workspace to help businesses start and then eventually move out on their own. It has not been working here, so this agreement grant has helped draft it to where we are encouraging these businesses and in fact giving them a deadline of when to get out. So this new agreement would be for the new innovation hub as we transition the old people over there and the new people that are in. So it would replace everything in our old innovation.
Do we have, there was a company, and I don't know if they got a hold of you, that was interested in that space if we vacate.
We have been working with, we have proposals from the chamber and DCDC that Grant is working on, we'll bring to council for your consideration. Hopefully.
The chamber was the one that I was thinking of.
Yes. And so we've been working really close with chamber and DCDC. We feel we have really good proposals, but Grant will draft that so council can see those. They would refer your approval. So yes. Okay, sorry, Grant.
You're good. So the term on these would be for an initial 12-month period. There are provisions where it could be extended for a maximum of one more 12-month period. Rent would be paid on a month-to-month basis. In this version of the agreement, the rental amount is left blank down in number 5. Staff's recommendation is $300 per month. If
any office over there, because I know there's a couple of them that are almost twice as big as the other offices, so I'm just wondering.
Yes, at this point, we are recommending all of them be the same amount. We're mirroring that after Roosevelt City. That's what they're currently doing. They're in the process of trying to change theirs to where the larger offices do cost more. But our thought is, as we're starting to get it, well, I believe there's 3 offices that are larger. Just two.
Two corner offices.
And so the way Vernal City's kind of did is through seniority, and that's our recommendation. We do feel once we get a bigger waiting list, we would come back to council for consideration of changing that.
Rent would increase by 10% if they decided to go into the next year, and that would have to be negotiated and approved by Josh. There are some pretty strict holdover provisions where if they hold or they stay there beyond the maximum of 2 years or arrangements are not made to go into the second year at all, rent would increase to 200%, so it would go from $300 to $600 per month, and then would continue to increase 33% each month after that. And that is just to try to incentivize them to move on. There's a
33% each month.
For a holdover.
Yeah.
I know.
That's after, say that again, the first year it stays for the 300, the next year
if they make arrangements in advance before their lease agreement ends, they can stay for a maximum of 12 additional months, so 24 total.
at the 300.
Well, it would increase 10% for the second year if it's by agreement. And so
then it
it's,
doubles after that.
yeah, just if they hold over, and which would be outside of the agreement's expired, then it would go to 200% for the first month, so from 300 to 600, and then if they stay there for additional months, it would increase 33% every month.
Mathematically though, it's 200% above the rate, it would actually be 600 more, so it'd actually be 900.
So it'd be 100%.
If it was 100% increase, it would be double. It'd be 300 plus another 300, which would be 600. So the 200, which is fine. I'm just saying it would be $900.
Look closely at the wording, because I think that it would just go to the.
I mean,
600, because it says it would be 200% of the original.
Right, and the original's 300.
So of the original.
Of the original.
Not
Okay.
in addition to, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the original. Okay.
We can change that word.
No. You're fine. I was just trying to clarify in my mind because that's.
I get what Don's saying, because if the holdover is 33%, then you're taking 33% and adding it to the original amount. And so that's where I think you're.
Except for it, that's where the difference is though, is the 200% is of the original, the 33% is of the previous months.
Right.
So each month it would be increasing.
And that's why I'm saying his logic followed the one equation.
Right, yeah.
And applied it to the other, which there's two different equations we're looking at there.
I'm good now, I needed to clarify that in my brain, so.
If you think it's more clear to change it, we can. We hope this
I would
doesn't come
almost
into
just
effect
say,
at all. But
it would be very, very easy just to say, that the rent would double the original amount.
Okay,
Instead of-
Yeah, I think that would be clearer in my mind if that's what I was
And
actually
then
gonna
the
do.
rest of the verbiage, I think, is.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll change the 200%, just say that it doubles then.
yeah, I think, cause that's the intent, so.
Yeah. Okay, there is a $100 deposit in section 6. There are provisions in there for late charges and interest. This is not changing from what we have been doing. We will cover utilities. They can have some upgrades at their own expense. Telephone will not be provided. The utilities will be just power and the internet that we choose. If they want to upgrade the internet, they could do that on their own.
Is there an ability to do that, where they have a separate router or modem or something like that, to where they can increase their?
We can find out.
Because Spectre's providing it for free.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're probably giving us 1 gig of speed.
Yeah, that would be good to know, cause if they're giving you a gig, you don't really
You
need
don't need
more
to
than that.
upgrade, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how they could potentially do that. So if they could, I say we leave it in the document. If not, then.
They could do it completely removed from the city. You can always get hotspot plans from Strata and just use your phone and have whatever service you want
Sure.
without plugging
Starlink.
into anything.
If they got fiber in there, they can do different ports for everybody. It's not-
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if that's what they have.
Yeah,
Just
each
saying,
office has a set.
Because those, even the fiber modems, they
split it up.
can split.
But you don't know what they're providing, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much, so.
That would be
I
good
think
to
it's
know.
good then. I was just curious if there's not ability. Hotspots are one thing, but when you're talking wiring and running, isolating, yeah.
Good.
Cool.
We'll be responsible for cleaning common areas. They're responsible for cleaning the individual offices. There's provisions in here making it clear that we do not become partners with them in their businesses.
On the cleaning, do we provide like a vacuum or some sort of sweeper or something that where they have access?
That's not addressed in the agreement. I don't know the answer to what our plans are.
like it, but.
Well, I'm,
The vacuum for the offices, that's a good point. I mean, we have one there.
I would just think if we're gonna require them to clean it, that it'd be nice if they don't have to bring something from home if there's something, that's all I'm saying. I agree, they should be responsible for cleaning, because we don't wanna be in there and be accused of, messing with their stuff or stealing anything, so they should be able to lock it and know it's secure, but at the same token, if we're expecting them clean, it would be nice if there was like a place where they could access some cleaning supplies, or a vacuum or something, you know what I'm saying? A sweeper, I don't know, whatever.
My only thought to that too is like the airport hangar, for example, it gives a provision where the landlord can enter the premises on certain amount of time notice. Yeah, I just want to make sure that's.
That's in here on number.
Yeah, and we should be able
It's
to.
a sticky office or
Right,
something.
Number 19.
Well, and if someone loses the key, we'd want to be able to get in, I just don't want us being there every day.
The property every once in a
Yeah,
while.
I
wouldn't think there's a-
I don't know if you put that in a contract or anything, but since there's somebody gonna have to go clean the common areas, could there be like a fee that they could pay and have somebody clean it for them type of a thing?
I think they can negotiate that on their own.
Yeah. Cause some of them might hire a cleaning person to do it.
Or see who we used to clean it, and they could hire them to That's what I would recommend is they
Put that
just use
in
that.
the contract or.
We can, if you guys want it in there, or we can just leave it saying, because right now it just says they're responsible for it, it's not saying how they have to do it.
I don't know that we need it in there, I think it's just a case by case, but I was more just thinking of logistics, if we're gonna require them to clean, either they need to have access to the person that's doing the cleaning so they can contract with them, or there's a closet that they would have access to that would have, you know, some cleaning supplies they could utilize if they wanted. So.
Which is a great point. We talked about some cleaning supplies, but we never mentioned bathrooms.
I would just.
That's important. Good catch.
Because I'm seeing the landlord's right of entry, you know, it gives conditions in case of an emergency upon 24 hours notice to make necessary or agreed repairs, decoration, alterations, or improvements. I just say that there should be 24 hours notice, we can inspect the property and make sure it's being maintained or.
Yeah.
Just like Roosevelt City can come in my hangar with 24 hours notice and inspect my hangar and make sure that I'm not doing anything outside of what that hangar is intended for. And
So you want to just simply say upon 24 hours notice that we can enter?
yeah,
Okay.
and not only, I mean, if there's something that smells in there, if there's something, you know, we can just say, hey, we need to come and inspect. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's better than having all the list of reasons, just say we have, because it's our building still.
Yeah.
They're just having access, so we should have a right to do that.
Well, just as a landlord, if you need to do, like in 19B, you have to give them 24-hour notice if you need to go in. But if it's an emergency, that's a little different. You can go in. So if something smelled like it was dying in there, you don't have to give them 24 hours notice to go in and find out what's going on.
For now, I can put it back in, but for now, I've made the change so it just reads A, in case of an emergency, B, upon 24 hours notice, and then goes on. So
Okay, I think that's.
So in the emergency part is there, right?
Yeah.
So go with that one.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, so I think that's better, that way.
Yeah, I've made that change. Either side can terminate on 30 days notice. We tried to make the termination provisions easy for both. I think everything else is just pulled from the template for the other agreement. It's kind of boilerplate.
I did have a question going back to the rent that we do for a year. What if they only need it for 6 months and need to move on? Is that okay, or would they have to?
Yeah, if we go back up to.
I missed that, that's all, I was just checking.
To the term in number 4, sunshine. We've just left blanks where whoever is working out the agreement with them, we just put in the starting and end dates. It can be anything up to 12 months on the initial agreement, but it can be 1 month, 2 months, whatever.
Okay, that's all, I thought that's what, I just couldn't remember.
Okay, so then I'll make the changes on the 200% to just say double. But then unless there's any other changes, I think we're probably ready to go. Oh, no, there is one more. Right now we've got on the signature line, the mayor. We think it'd probably be more efficient if Josh was authorized to sign on this. When you guys approve the contract form, and then just leave the details, putting in effective dates, the name of the person who's renting. We've already filled in the rent in number 5, but then authorize Josh or his designee to sign the agreements.
I would be good with that.
Either way, there's no difference.
Okay, is there anything else that you guys want changed or anything else that you have questions on?
I would move we approve with the contract with the changes that were.
I also have the landlord rights being edited in that. Is that something you guys want, or no? Just to pare them down so that they only say in case of emergency and any other reason we want 24 hours notice?
Yeah, that was one of the changes
I
here.
had the double instead of 200, authorizing the city manager to sign 300 for rent, and then removing that list of reasons in the land for.
They didn't, no, they just changed the bullet 2 from, with 24 hours notice for certain things to just say with 24 hours notice we can enter.
Yeah, that's what she meant, just
Yeah.
removing the list of reasons. why
Yeah,
we can't,
just
Just leaving it as, as long as we get 24 hours notice, we can to inspect. For periodic inspection, if you want to just leave one more.
Okay, I think that's it then.
Don, you made the motion?
I made the motion to go forward with those changes.
Any further discussion? If not, is there a
This
second?
is a really random thing, but do you have anything in there about, like, you're gonna let people bring their animals?
That is not random, by the way.
Yeah, animals are real,
Animals are permitted?
they're prohibited.
Okay.
There's clauses in there about private enjoyment, things you basically cannot.
It's a place of business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the same rules apply for service animals and things like that?
Let me pull it up, but I don't remember exactly how I did that, but we did address it. Oh, yeah, subject to, I think, does it say federal, state, local wide? Yeah. So it says, pets tenants shall not, allow pets or animals of any kind inside the property without the express written consent of landlord, subject to all applicable provisions of federal, state, and local laws.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Any other thoughts? Do we have a second?
I have a second.
We got a second by Councilman Goodrich, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that's unanimous.
This isn't a thought on that, just I have a couple questions about the innovation hub that people are asking me, but are there certain times that they can use it? Like, is it an 8 to 5 thing, or can they go whenever?
They will have a key fob similar to the city offices, they'll have 24-hour access. So they will be. We, just to report on that, this is part of the city manager purpose, since we're talking innovation up there, was a water leak right now that is getting addressed. So it will delay a little bit of time with getting individuals in there. We've got individuals working on it.
Where?
In the floor under the break room. It's coming up from the bottom.
Oh my God. Well, at least it's not come through the ceiling. We fixed that.
You think the old library kind of left it for it?
Sorry, I caught the very end of that conversation.
I'm glad he's in his new digs.
Hey, you really need to look at that old building
I will.
when you get a chance.
Yeah.
We'll take you
I saw
on a
pictures.
personal
Looks
tour.
great. Thank you.
Looks really
Be a
good.
great place for APR meetings as well.
That's true.
And with that, just an FYI, so we're doing reservations for like the conference room, but we're not charging for those. You can get a public meeting space, PD's talked about how you train together, things like that, but
Get people in it a lot.
exactly, we want to utilize, such a great facility.
Okay.
So, and I do want to compliment, Grant on working on this contract, he's done a phenomenal job, and honestly, when you compare it to Vernal's, I think it's fantastic, because we actually brought out Vernal's to put them side by side to see what mistakes or what things we could learn from. He's done a phenomenal job, ours is a little better. It's true.
For the record.
For the record, yes.
It's true. Any other questions about the Innovation Hub?
No.
No.
Can we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
So the next one, we have an RDA update on the downtown development. So back in 2019, council and the RDA board approved design standards and a plan to do a downtown revitalization plan. We've worked with Cody Dieter to help us do this plan. We have already had a public hearing. We've approved going forward with it. However, we've been having some difficulty getting some of the other partners on board. Mayor had a great idea of taking our large scope plan, and you have a copy of just the front page and the map. So you don't have a full packet. The whole packet is about 300 pages, but this gives you an idea of what the map looks like. One of the concerns that the feedback we got was the area was so large. And so one of the ideas Mayor had is if we shrink that down and we focus on a smaller area, keep the full project, but make the development area that we're focused on with the TIF on a smaller area, we can then start reinvesting money and then still use that money for the whole project.
Yeah.
Cody, go for it.
So basically what it would be is we would divide this large area into about 4 or 5 subsections. So Roosevelt could collect the TIF, the tax incremental financing, on the whole area, but then if we had another entity, taxing entity that would participate with us on maybe a smaller section of this, then they would contribute to that smaller section. And so it would allow us, Roosevelt City, personally to tax over the whole area, and then that smaller, or another taxing agency to be able to participate in tax over a smaller area that they're comfortable with. Does that make sense? So we don't have to have one. We can do it one way, and we can involve another taxing entity to become involved in a smaller portion of this. If that makes, instead of narrowing the scope with Roosevelt City as a whole, and as a whole to narrow down to just one small area. So we get the best of both worlds that way, I guess what I'm saying.
And we truly feel once this process starts, everybody will start to see the benefits and it will really snowball into a much greater project. The city did budget in our capital projects an allocation from what once was ARPA money. Now it's no longer ARPA, it's now part of the fund, but it has been earmarked for a capital project for the redevelopment area, just over 840,000, somewhere in there, that we can start to kick off this project. So what we're planning on doing tonight is just giving council a heads up, and then next council meeting, Cody will be here with us, and we're going to propose that we adopt a budget, a plan, and the interlocal agreement between the RDA, which is council, and the city council. So get that RDA or that interlocal going, and then we can kick off the project. We can start our redevelopment, where part of it will be loan, part of it will be grant, to where we can make a self-sustaining project and get the ball rolling and get our downtown and our Main Street really going.
One thing with this too is once we agree upon it, we still won't be able to implement the TIF until 2026.
Yes.
Because it has to be in by November 1st of the previous year that you want to implement that, so we missed the deadline. But this will be a good way to get it started, get it going, and then by the end of 2025, we can implement the TIF. Everything's already rolling, and that TIF will actually fund the grant side of this project, and then we anticipate having a loan side of this project. So we'll have monies coming in both sides to fund this indefinitely until we decide it's enough. One other thing that I think would be important to mention to council is we want to have some provisions in place on downtown that people have to meet certain parameters or design standards to be able to qualify for those funds. And so there will be a couple council members involved. We want to go to the RDA and really get a good vision of what we want our downtown to look like. And then when we give money out, it has to meet those standards. So that we start to see some uniformity. It doesn't have to be super strict, but just something that to where we see a thing that's starting to take place in our downtown and spruce things up. Amen.
And in the proposed plan that was done years ago, they had a lot of those design standards, so we've got a base to start from. But you as the city council need to make sure that it is within the vision that you as our elected leaders approve of.
Yeah.
So we will be bringing that back to make sure. But we have a base to start from. We're not starting from scratch by any means.
And I would say like the time frame to actually be having some work downtown happen would be as soon as snow melts. I mean, we want to have this in place by the first of the year, but then really start implementing things at the beginning of spring of 2025. Yeah. We'll be up and running with that.
Any questions? This is more of just a heads up. I'm not asking for any approval.
Thank you. Mr. Bake.
Mayor,
You go ahead and do your,
Mayor, I was gonna move to approve expenditures and finances. That was
okay, yeah,
next.
do you have any report, because it doesn't show on the agenda, but go ahead and do your report.
It's on the next page, the city manager report.
Mine says right there.
Why do I always get shortchanged?
Which one
It's
is
good that Councilman Goodrich shares with me, because she gets all the information.
Thank you.
I printed it off at home.
So
Go ahead while you're up.
I'll be rather brief while we're doing this. I do want to recognize one of our incredible officers, Corey Reed. He is going to receive a Medal of Valor on Thursday from the state for the help in the apprehension of the murder suspect in the Santa Quinn Sergeant murder that happened recently. So he will be with many of our police officers down there to support him, but this is a great honor and great recognition for our officers for the incredible work that they do. So please spread the word, because this is an incredible accomplishment, and we definitely want to celebrate one of our brave officers for the fantastic work they've done. So that will be this Thursday. Also for your calendars, we have the Employee Winter Party, December 16th at 5 p.m. at the Crossroads Center. So please mark your calendars for that. The Roosevelt City Santa Parade will be December 19th at 4 p.m. That's where Santa and the mayor this year are going to ride on a fire truck as we go through the community and handing out small presents to the children. December 2nd, the Parks Department will be putting up the ice skating rink, and hopefully we have more than 2 days this year of ice. Yeah.
It's a lot of work that they do, but they do a great job, and it is an incredible thing that we have. And then finally, the two staffs worked on this one. Staffs worked with one of our oil companies, our providers, and we found that there were some mineral lease monies that were due to the city that had not been paid over the years. And we recently just received just over $400,000. Imagine
Money that we were not prepared for, that we were able to.
We go out on a limb here. The county's supposed to filter that money down to us? Oh, no. Good.
No, it's actually royalties on drilling
Within our
Yes.
property, like the property that we actually own because Roosevelt City.
So we will be opening and amending the budget shortly, so council will be thinking of where we want to allocate those funds. But it's such a great thing, that's a great boost for our city, and with the many projects we have going on, we're thinking again, we'll do some more.
That's
We all have
pointing
money,
to
we all
Ryan.
have projects going already in our head with that money.
The employee Christmas, December 16th, where was that at again?
Crossroads.
Crossroads.
And it was the 19th?
The 19th is the parade.
16th is the.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And the employee winter party is for all full-time employees plus.
Oh, I already had that. I didn't have to punch in.
The employee winter party is at 5 o'clock.
On the 16th.
16th,
Yes,
on
the
Monday.
16th.
Okay. I can make that.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll take the.
Okay, I move we approve the financial. I reviewed those, didn't see any problems.
Anybody else have any questions? Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Goodrich, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Ryan said he was going to forego with the capital projects tonight, right? And that means any committee reports? I had already mentioned with the airport board, the overlay zone. I think the airport board does a really good job with assisting, and thanks to Drew and everybody else that's involved with that. I don't have anything else other than that. Well, we did meet, I will just say, we did meet on the gun range. There is cement that's poured, the buildings are going up. And anyway, the 200-yard range, we're talking about whether opening that up still this fall. We're thinking of possibly getting a gate and how to control that. So that might come up before the council here in the next month or so.
The environmental assessment done, all that stuff.
Well, so that's independent of what we're doing right now. The 200-yard range is pretty much done, and WCF and other partners have really worked hard to get that done and paid for, so that won't affect the rest. But the environmental assessment is pretty much done, but they have to have a 30-day comment period and then a public hearing. And so we're still at least a month out before that's finalized. Have you heard from Gary since we talked to him on?
No.
Okay.
No, we haven't, so.
So we're still hoping. But that $400,000 would come in handy if we don't get that grant. So anyway, that's all I have. Councilman Goodrich.
Don't have anything, but I know Daniel's here from the HR.
Okay. Councilman Allen, do you have anything? Okay, let's go ahead and let Daniel, if you have something you'd like to share real quick, we'll give you the time, and then nothing else, a motion to adjourn following that.
Mayor, we do have a closed session.
Fine.
Sorry.
All right. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay.
And would you state your full name and your position just for the record?
So I'm Daniel Mockley, and I am a member of the Arts, Park, and Rec Committee. I act as the secretary of that committee. I think, hopefully, looks like there was an attachment that you were given. This actually comes up because of my own library board, Producing County Library, and the State Library Board, and kind of just opened things from there. There's only a few of us that have been on the Arts, Park, and Rec Committee since it was formed, pre-pandemic. There's been a ton of turnover on it since, and a lot of people have given a lot of time to it. And the questions just come up from other committee members, like, it'd be nice if we had some kind of compensation for all the time that they put into it. At first they were talking of in-kind things and things like that, but as I was doing this research with the State Library Board, I thought, gosh, this seems to apply as well here. So some of the code that you see up there, it seems to be pointing in a possible direction that the City Council could take. The answer could still be no, you should still just be volunteering your time, and that's a City Council decision to make. But in the Utah Code 1155-103, Roosevelt City, being the political subdivision, may authorize a board member, and board members defined in 6383-106, that's a person appointed or designated by statute to serve on a board, and then a board includes a committee in those definitions. But you may authorize a member of the committee that is created by the political subdivision to receive per diem, which doesn't mean meals, that is defined in Administrative Rule 25.5, and travel expenses for meetings actually attended. You don't get paid if you do nothing on the committee, which makes sense. And it would be at a rate that the political division establishes. And then Administrative Rule 25-5 is in reference to these other codes, and that it talks about that. Yeah, can you scroll up just a little bit?
25.5.3.
Yeah, keep on going. So per diem means a taxable compensation. It's kind of shot down the in-kind idea, right? The reason being is they need to be taxed on any compensation they're getting, and then the rate is just the amount of money. There is a maximum. The state pays $135 for each official meeting up to 4 hours. We've never gone over 4 hours. And when you look at other boards, planning and zoning, or other committees out in other subdivisions in Utah, it's not that high. Kind of an average seems to be around $30 to $50 a meeting, something like that. And then I can't remember if there's more down below this code that we submitted. Yeah, and if the board member, if the committee member says, I don't want to be paid, might mess up my own taxes or whatever, then fine. They don't have to do that, they can reject it, but if they want to take it, the appropriate taxes need to be withheld. W-9s come into play, things like that. There's no action to be taken on this item. That would have to be a public hearing for the public to talk about if you ever determine something like that. Just the feeling is we have a hard time attracting people to this committee, and the committee does a lot. If you looked at Vanessa Oak's effort in the fall festival that she just did with the balloons.
I paid her for that.
She put in a lot of
There was
hours.
a side conversation there as well.
No, I'm just kidding.
But she did, go ahead.
She does a lot, but that's because I allow her to through the business. But she does a lot on her own time as well. I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying not everyone would allow people to work.
Right,
and
do
those
what
types of
she's
things.
doing,
Yes.
right.
It is
So-
true.
But she does much more even outside of.
She does. There was a lot of time spent on that for sure.
So I'm agreeing with. I'm just giving
Giving you
That's
grief.
You know, Preston Cadlick's been the chair for many years now. He's gone after many grants for Teddy's Playground and things like that. When you look at the donations that Vanessa brought in, it was $8,000 for the balloon thing that she just did, and the revenues from the vendors and things like that. I mean, right now APR is considering meeting 10 times a year. We aren't meeting in August because it's just too busy. In December, it's holidays and family. So if all 15 members were to show up, and let's say it was a rate of 50, and they all show up to every meeting, which has never happened.
Very good.
Could, $7,500. And not many of us live outside of the city limits needing mileage. Mileage would be pretty low.
Would you propose that you do would you do meeting and mileage, or would you just do strictly you get money for attending a meeting?
That's your call. Code allows you to do per diem and travel if you decide that that's what you'd like to do.
Simplify it a lot just to do the flat rate.
Mhm. Instead of calculating mileage. It makes sense for a board like Duchesne County Library where I have members, I have a member in Tabiona, one's in Roosevelt, one's in Duchesne, and the meetings move. And so mileage should come into play. That's a long travel distance, but I personally understand what you're saying there. It's not very much, just do a flat rate. They're in city limits, most of them.
And even the ones that are on the board, I think, are very near city limits.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think the farthest one is Jeremy Tubbs. It's about 10 miles away, I think. That's what she was saying. So,
yeah.
Anyway, just things to consider.
I have a couple of things to add just because I've been going to the meetings and there are consistently, would you say, four or five of you that are there each time consistently?
Yeah, we struggle to have
So for 3 or 4 months in a row, they didn't have enough people to have a quorum and couldn't make those decisions that need to be made with the quorum. And so I think this would help to get people to show up more consistently. So it's a little bit of a frustration for them, I think, to those that are coming consistently to show up and not be able to move forward with some of the decisions that they're making. So, and I really appreciate the time and the efforts that they're doing in behalf of Roosevelt City. So I'm in total support of it. So it's my 2 cents.
Earlier on was much more involved, and I see how much work goes into that as well. I echo the same sentiments as Councilman Goodrich in that it's well worth the money to have that committee there and have active members and to have something that would entice them to be there more consistently. One thing that we want to look at is I think our planning and zoning. That's what I was thinking. One time it was
Probably shouldn't be higher than planning and
so
zoning.
So I just would want to make sure, whatever we do for one committee, we're going to have to do for all. We have the airport board, we don't have a golf committee that's actively meeting right now, but that could be a potential. And then the Arts, Parks and Rec, planning and zoning, and Interfaith Council, which is more kind of.
I think that's more of a service thing.
A service thing, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But we would want to look at some of those others and make sure whatever we did, we could apply that to some of the other committees and make sure that we're not getting into a position financial, which I wouldn't think that would be the case. But the other thought, when we started that committee, it was I think it ranged. We had a range in there as far as what would dictate a quorum, and I can't remember.
I think it's just simple majority of who's on the committee.
Yeah, but there's some verbiage in there that it also specifies kind of a range, and I can't remember, but we can look into that. Maybe we could lower that threshold, because right now we have 3 subcommittees with 5 members on each subcommittee, is like technically a full quorum. Maybe we could go 3 subcommittees with 3 members, I don't know. So, you know, because we do seem to get just a core group of active members. And would it help to shrink that committee a little bit, because you only said like 9 members instead of 15 members?
I don't know.
Or does
It'll
it
be something to
really-
take back to the group and see what they think.
Okay.
If they think they can handle it all.
The more hands, the lighter the work. That was the thought behind, 5, 5, and 5, is there's quite a bit of work to do in each one of those if they're actively participating in.
Could you have the 5, 5, and 5, but only 3 are on the actual APR committee? Do you know what I'm saying? So that you're on the subcommittee, but you're, as a voting member, then your quorum's not as big. I don't know. Just
We talked about that with planning and zoning too, having like the dedicated board members, and then you'd have some contingent that they really don't participate unless, alternates. So they're not really on the board, but they're just kind of an alternate. I don't know. Simple, in my mind, the simpler we do it, the easier it is to administer. So.
Sorry, changing the subject, sort of, I thought per diems aren't taxable. Cause like I get per diems for like meals and things for, reimburse or per diem for meals instead of giving my receipt for the university. If I go on a conference trip, for example, they just give me a set amount for meals for that day and it's a per diem, and I've never had to pay tax on that I'm aware of.
Right.
A stipend you would have to pay tax on, like we pay faculty adjuncts to do part-time work at USU to teach certain classes. The stipend is taxed, but a per diem is not, but it says has to be taxed.
Go ahead.
I think the difference is your, like the meals are
a reimbursement.
A reimbursement or a different.
So it's because
they're a different category. What the per diem means here is just like a payment for a meeting.
Yeah. The definition for this one is what's different, Don.
Okay.
It's not a reimbursement. Stipend might be a more accurate way to say
I
it.
think a stipend's more accurate for services rendered kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and that is taxable. Because per diem doesn't sound right to me. Again, and I don't disagree. I think it's something we need to look at. I just trying to clarify in my mind, because anytime I get a per diem for anything, it's usually just, this is money to cover time, expenses, whatever, whereas a stipend, when I got a stipend, that was taxed.
Agreed.
And on a stipend, there's no requirement of the city, from my understanding, I could be wrong, but there's no requirement of the city to pay taxes. On that per se, it's the individual, other than the taxes the city would be required, but the individual, any state tax or whatever, the individual would be responsible for counting that in their taxes. Like we wouldn't have to do it. I don't know. I think it's something to look at just to make it easy is what
We could check with the accountants and just see how that would work. One question that I have, what do you think would be a reasonable amount that would entice people to be there that you think would be fair?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the point. I should have looked at what your other boards are already being paid. And
I'm not saying that those boards are in line with what they should be paid either. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Planning and zoning does need to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about the hours of work that planning and zoning put in ahead of the meeting, it's not, and I think that's something to think about with these meetings. Yeah, you come and do the action, just like you all do. You put in tons of time preparing for this meeting, and then you only are here for a short time. Same thing with planning and zoning. A lot of work's being done, and then they come for the meeting, and then that's it. And if the APR people are very active, and I think the court is, Jeremy Liberton's every tournament, Preston's doing a ton, Vanessa's doing a ton, helping out with UBIC. There's a lot of stuff going on outside of that meeting, but they need to show up to the meeting.
And UBIC is going to be a larger commitment for that committee moving forward from year to year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because Chad's already threatening, and he's sticking around, I think.
Yeah.
But
He shows up to the meetings here and there.
He does, pretty frequently. But that was kind of the thought too. When the committee started, it was kind of like, well, we just want to get something going. but more keeps getting added. Like, we want you guys to take this, we want you guys to take this, and some people are like, and you want me to volunteer all my time on this too? And then Chad's like, I volunteered for you. It's like, we know, Chad. We've had even people come to the meeting that are interested in, not pet projects, but a specific aspect, disc golf or pickleball or something. They're like, this committee sounds interesting, but I don't want to do it all for free. And we hear that a lot. So, I don't think I can say what seems to be appropriate. I think it would have to be, like you said, compared to all your boards. What is the amount of work that each board's putting in, and what is fair between everybody? I agree with that.
Yeah, that board is an active board. That committee is definitely one of the most, in my opinion, for as, how do I put that? There's several words that came to mind, but not any of them that I want to use on record. But I'll just say this. For it just coming together and being formed and being fairly new, the amount of work and productivity that comes out of that board is quite impressive. So even though we're not having quorums all the time and things like that, there's still a lot of productivity coming out of that board, a lot of ideas and a lot of good projects. And so I see the value in it. And I think maybe as staff and council, we can look at some of our other boards and we can compare to other cities and see what they're doing, and we can get a pretty good ballpark of what we should be doing. And then maybe in your next meeting, I can't make Thursday nights. I really am not even that busy anymore, other than Thursday nights do not work. So if there was another night, I can, but if you'll run that past that committee and just say, I think, we're not making a decision tonight, but I think the consensus is that there's an appetite for the council to look at that and potentially do something. Let's get a little feedback from staff. Why don't you talk to them and see what kind of numbers they're thinking. Whenever I get in any kind of negotiations with compensation, I always like to know what they're thinking, so that even though it's hard for them to say, I just don't want to be offensive and be like, well, $15. You know what I mean? Something like that. I want to make sure that we hear what they're saying and they feel valued. Because they have put a certain value on their time. And I want to know what that is as we're working that into the equation, so that it's not, they're thinking $70 and we're thinking 40 or 30 or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. They were not shooting that high. When we were talking, because we shared this code with them last month, we'll meet again on Thursday, and people are like, $30? And I'm like, well, sometimes it's 50 for others, but I was the one that was like, maybe 50. So I think that's kind of the ballpark they're looking at, 30 to 50. But I don't know. And I guess besides looking at grants, if the committee is doing a significant amount of work, would you have had to have hired a city employee with benefits to do some of the similar work? And how much does that cost benefit come out versus paying them a stipend? Mm-hmm. Just something else to think about. Same thing with planning and zoning. The boards are great. I don't think I'm saying that mostly for you all. I think I'm saying that mostly for the public that will say, that's stupid. Why are we raising this? Or why are we doing this? And I think the question has to be brought back to the public, like, well, do you enjoy everything that the committee's done for you? If so, isn't it worth it a little bit, that little investment for the whole year to get all of that?
I don't think the public's going to push back at all. And in fact, to be completely honest, I would rather have a committee of 12 to 15 people than one person doing it, because the whole point of the committee is to bring different thoughts and ideas and collaboration together to get things done, where one person might have one vision of how things should be. This is an opportunity to have our residents participate in how their tax money is to be spent. And they have their own vision, their own thoughts, and we want to incorporate that with what they're doing. That's the whole point of the committee. So I wouldn't want to, even if it was less, to just hire one person. I wouldn't want to do that anyway, because you lose scope, you lose,
Good points.
Yeah, so
I'll ask them on Thursday. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yep.
Mayor, I would move we go to closed session pursuant of,
I just have a request. Remember last time we did a closed session, you motioned to enter the closed session.
and come out of,
And then adjourn. That way I don't have to continue
Right.
recording or be present.
yeah, so pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-205 to discuss personnel.
Oh, yeah.
And then come back out of closed session to a regular session and then adjourn. Is that correct, Sunshine? Thank you.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second by Councilman White, all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's just a majority. A majority. It's a majority of the
Like online, you can watch?
If it is, I will find out.
I need to stop.
I knew what you were thinking.
Yeah.